On this episode of Purposely Curious, we get nostalgic and reminisce on the 90s rock music scene. After doing the episode on Kurt Cobain's death, I got sucked into a long list of 90s rock music, and I felt the need to do an episode dedicated to the genre and music scene. So, get your grunge or messy hair ready and join us and be ready to rock on as this episode starts now. Hello, Leonie.
Greetings, Mary. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Just enjoying, summer. Actually, no, it's fall now, right?
Yeah, it's officially fall weather. Well, no, it's still summer weather, but it's officially fall, right?
Yeah, the heat wave's coming back, by the way. It's going to be 100 in a few days.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
Fun.
Oh, well, I'm lucky. It's going to be in the 80s.
Yeah.
So,
you are
sucks
lucky.
for you, bro.
Well, I'm indoors. I'm cool.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, actually, I like to kind of decorate, and I have like these fake pumpkins that I print out, and so I'm looking forward to that.
That's fun.
I thought about doing that today, but I just didn't have time. So I'll probably do it next weekend.
Yeah, you got to get it done before October 1st, otherwise, the great pumpkins can come get you. The big calabaza.
Maybe not October 1st, because October 1st is it Friday?
I have no idea.
Let me see. Now I need to know. It is
Playing the Jeopardy
thing.
thing.
Oh no, it's Thursday.
Oh, Thursday.
So yeah, tomorrow I'm busy, so I'm not gonna really. I'll see. If not, I'll have to do it the 3rd.
Nice. Nice.
What, is there a story behind that, or no? You just said that.
I'm just making up legends here as we go.
Oh, okay.
You heard it first in the Purposely Curious podcast.
Oh, God.
The great calabaza that took out Mary.
Well, on this episode, as the last episode Leonie and I did was the Kurt Cobain death, kind of our little investigation. I got really sucked into that after we recorded that episode, and I found a lot more information.
Right.
Which I think we may do another one. I'm not sure, but I found a lot of stuff that's like super fishy out there after that. But in the process of doing all of that, I've started to get really nostalgic. Having grown up, especially, on the west side, we talked about all the bands in the grunge era, right? And then you had the ska scene. I mean, the California, the whole West Coast growing up was just like rock heaven.
Right.
Yes, we had bands from other states that were big, but I started to get really nostalgic. So I wanted to kind of go over with Leonie songs that we really dug in the 90s that from our rock, side of our music likes.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Especially you worked in the rock industry.
I did. It was an exciting time, I gotta say, especially in the 90s. Super exciting because, like we mentioned in the last episode, the Kurt Cobain episode, where music had changed, right? When you had Butch Vig, who's the drummer of Garbage, by the way, when he produced Sonic Youth, Nirvana, and Smashing Pumpkins, I mean, he changed music for like forever, because he brought on the grunge scene. These bands came out of nowhere, and the next thing you know, they kind of sidelined the whole metal scene for a good while, and created a bunch of enemies, I'm sure, but the grunge scene was thriving because you had a bunch of bands come out of that, and it was great for music. It was great because they were not just one-hit wonders. They were like, they had legit records, and they were pretty good, and record number 2 came out, and 3 and 4, and you're like, damn, it was a good time. It was a good time for music.
Yeah, I especially for rock.
Right.
I think the 90s and possibly the 2000s were like, they were pretty strong and solid.
Right.
In the charts, even up to the 2000s, there was a lot of rock that was mainstream. When I say mainstream, it's just like people really, really enjoyed it. It was only after that it seemed that what you guys see now as the popular music is literally the popular music. And so rock has a really hard time finding its footing in the industry now.
Yeah.
Still has the same fans. That hasn't changed. You just don't get like that airplay, and you don't really get the award shows.
Right.
But there was a girl who was dating like my cousin's cousin. So she's related to on that side, on my cousin's side, right? And she was really upset because I think it was the Grammys and it was the year the Arctic Monkeys won. No, it wasn't the Arctic Monkeys. Oh my God, it's a band, like a rock folklore indie band.
Okay.
They were at Coachella and I cannot remember their names right now.
Oh man. I'm trying to think of
But what I'm getting at is that she just went on a total Facebook like rant, like who the fuck are these guys, and da, da, da.
Right.
She was going for like Justin Bieber or something, I don't know.
Right.
And that was my whole point. It was like, well, they gave it to this band, and which I was like, that's cool, because there's a lot of people like that are not mainstream listeners, because there's millions and millions of people, right?
Right.
So I thought that was a well-deserved award. And this is just me, the horrible podcaster that I am, cannot think of their name because this thought.
You shush.
Because literally the thought just came into my head and I cannot remember. Anyways, but yeah, so rock is still living. It's still living and it's still thriving. Yeah, it's just not on the mainstream and what you see on TV and YouTube and everything, but it's still thriving. But yes, the 90s was huge for, well, it could be just because I also grew up in that era, right?
Right.
That I got so nostalgic thinking about the 90s rock. So is there anyone that stands out for you right off the bat?
Oh God, for the 90s, I mean, it's hard to pick just one, because it's like, it's like if you have 6 kids and it's like somebody says, hey, you got to pick your favorite kid. And you're like, well, you can't, I mean, you can't, I mean, you can't come out of the 90s without mentioning, Stone Temple Pilots, Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, No Doubt, Bush, Radiohead, Blink-182, Alice in Chains, Weezer, Foo Fighters. There's so many. I mean, it's like, how do you pick one? I mean, it's like trying to say, well, what's your favorite song? Like, you can't, because I think you either liked these bands or you did not. Usually, or maybe you just liked all of them, right? And and if you did, every one of them had something to offer you. Like, not one of those bands I mentioned had bad music. Like, they had something good to offer you, to the point where you're like, man, I only like this. Even if you like that one song and that's all you liked out of their 14 records or whatever, at least you had one song,
Yeah.
But it gave us something.
Yeah. Now, is there any songs that if you listen to now that it just brings you back to a certain time in the 90s?
Yeah, definitely. Because, for example, Pearl Jam reminds me of my senior year of high school, because that's when I discovered them. And I'll tell you,
K-Rock.
Yeah, I was listening to K-Rock. They were all over K-Rock. And interestingly enough, it wasn't until like after high school, like mid 90s or so, they had a song called Yellow Ledbetter that I could not find anywhere. It was like not on any of their CDs releases. It was not any, it was one of those where it was a single import CD, right? That stupid import single CD was $30 at the time. And I was like, dang, that's, at the time that was expensive,
Yeah.
for one song, and I was just like, that's crazy, and I remember looking at the CD and thinking, I want this so bad, but I'm not spending, there's no way. So luckily a friend had it, he had a copy of it, whatever, so that's how I got a copy of it, but it's funny how like a song like that, or I always think of, for example, the Smashing Pumpkins. I always think of them because when I think of their records like Gish and Siamese Dream, I feel like those songs on those records tell a story of my teenage years. So it's like, because there's songs about love, about family, about death, So it's like, wow, they kind of, it's like my soundtrack to my teenage years. And it's interesting because a lot of people say that about that about that band, and I'm just like, yeah, it's so weird. I cannot explain it. It's like between those records, and then later when they released the double Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness double CD, like that was also full of songs that told like stories of my childhood and teenage years. And I'm just like, that's crazy. It's like, finding love, friendships and all that, I'm like, so I definitely connected deeply with those kind of songs. And then, I started looking, there was some darker stuff there, from bands that were a little bit darker because of, they were heavy on the drug use and stuff like that. Like obviously Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots, they're into, some bad stuff, but they wrote great music,
Yeah. Well, I mean, musically, they were all talented.
Yeah, definitely. How about you? Which was like the one song or band for you?
Well, it was a lot of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
A shitload of them. Definitely the guys I had crushes on were Kurt Cobain and Chris Cornell.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, when he was young, because they were out in the 80s, Soundgarden, right?
Right.
He was just gorgeous. And I'm not like a fan of men with like long hair, even when but for some reason, these two men, but Chris Cornell to me was beautiful.
Yeah, he was.
I was
he was
crushing on him so hard
yeah.
when he was young. And, when 1990, my brother was born in 1990, so I was 7 years old. So I grew up with this music, turned into a teenager.
Right.
And I graduated high school in 2001, which was the beginning of the next decade of rock.
Right.
So my whole high school, and I went from elementary, junior high to like, well, I'm really feeling these guys, and obviously I couldn't go to these concerts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
For me, it was like, okay, the fucking posters and the magazines at the store. How
Right.
fucking amazing is this man? Oh my god, I love him. His blue eyes.
He was a beautiful man. Not only that, but super talented. And
oh yeah.
And now that I look back at like videos, clips of him and his daughter, it's like he was a family man. He was big on his family. Like he didn't care about like, I'm gonna go on a drug binge and just see you guys later. It was more like, no, I'm gonna go spend time with my family, my daughters, and my wife. Yeah. So like you look at that in a rock and roll environment, and you're like, well, that's very admirable, because he was a sex symbol, like you said. He was a beautiful man. That guy could have been a supermodel,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like he just avoided all that mess. And I mean, unfortunately, sadly, things like depression, that kind of stuff probably got to him, and those were his personal demons for whatever reason. But what's really cool is that his daughter, I think her name is Tony. Tony. Oh my God, what's his? I'm spacing on his name right now. Cornell. Tony Cornell.
Okay.
She has a podcast or a YouTube channel podcast where in the last couple months, she has been interviewing like Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. So she's been interviewing these main, lead singers from all these grunge bands of that era that knew her dad. And it's really cool because they're telling stories about her dad, and it's just like, it's so touching because it's like, I've never heard of these stories,
Mm-hmm.
And she's really good at talking with them. I don't know how old she is, but I want to say she's in her teens still, like late teens, maybe 17 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely check it out if you're a fan of like Soundgarden and Nirvana and all that, because there's some great stories that are being told right now.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely going to check it out. I feel like sometimes I'm always looking for something.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I was never a huge fan of theirs.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
I just couldn't click with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think I'm trying to remember why. I think I know why I got into them early, because the early stuff like Gish and Siamese Dream was super heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it was grunge, but it was like, it had metal elements to it,
Yeah.
And back then, my earliest taste of rock music was metal, was Dokken, and was Guns N' Roses,
Mm-hmm.
So it went from like Guns N' Roses, Dokken, then it transitioned into, Smashing Pumpkins. But I didn't see this as like, hey, what the hell is this? It's different. It was more like just the transition. It was like another band,
Yeah.
Then later you realize, they're not a metal band, even though they're playing metal music,
Yeah. Yeah. I was a huge fan of Pearl Jam. So I don't know if you've noticed a pattern. I like deep, manly voices when they're singing.
Yeah.
So those three singers right now are just like that deep. I just fucking dug it. Like I
Right.
still dig it. Like I don't know why. It's like those deep singing voices just get me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
And these are guys who could hit high notes. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was just feeling it. Having grown up with my dad, who, my dad is what, 60, 59 or 60? I can't remember. He was a huge rocker guy from the 70s. And so when I was a little kid, right, he would still be playing the 70s, but also be playing rock from like the 80s. And so he would play Metallica.
Right.
And so I got into like really appreciating the guitar because I would sit with him and he would kind of play the music and then kind of show this and that. And so when the 90s started and I started to kind of like get my personal musical taste, because he didn't move from the 80s with me as far as like liking rock.
Right.
It was, I noticed my pattern. So it was like they had to have guitar riffs, a good bassist, and a man with a deep voice.
Right.
I was all about that. So I do have a pattern. So I can see why maybe I didn't like Smashing Pumpkins per se.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, those three bands, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Nirvana really took a big piece of my childhood. Like they were amazing and fucking gods in the early 90s for me. Now we're only talking rock. I mean, I grew up in the hood, so I was down with
OPP.
West Coast hip hop and shit, but we're just gonna talk about rock today. So but yeah, I was also big living in Southern California, living in where basically there was a punk, ska, right? Reggae scene as well.
Yep.
Not only did we have grunge music that was fucking huge, we had those bands.
Yeah.
And they all came from playing at small venues.
Yeah.
We're not talking about venues in Hollywood. No, they were playing in the OC, you know what I mean? Long Beach, San Pedro. So I love that shit too.
Oh, yeah.
And as everybody knows, and I always get this pronunciation wrong. Is it Sublime?
Yes.
Okay, I got it right. So a lot of you guys know them. I was obsessed with them, and I loved the song they did with Gwen Stefani.
Saw Red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love, because I loved her. Like the way you guys see Gwen Stefani right now, she was a completely different person back then, you know?
Yeah.
And I fucking adored her. She, so these were all like Southern California bands. And I mean, there's so many bands, but I really got into that scene as well. So yeah, I'm a big Sublime fan, and I like my funny story. So, you know that song Pawn Shop?
Yeah.
So my brother was little, and this was after what's his name died of an overdose. Bradley James.
Bradley Noel, yeah.
Yes. That James is his middle name. So the reason I call him Bradley James, because my first boyfriend was obsessed with that name.
Huh.
He was obsessed with him as an artist as well.
Nice.
But long story short, my brother, having grown up with my dad and me and my brother being super close, my brother started getting that rock ear. And so he really enjoyed the Pawn Shop song. And I think, we grew up really humble. You know what I mean?
Right.
My brother wanted like a guitar or something. And so he kept bugging my mom, let's go buy one at the pawn shop. And my mom, being like the Hispanic older generation, it's like, do you think your brother, wants to go to the pawn shop because that song is telling him to go to the fucking pawn shop? Like, because it's like devil's music, the music we would listen to, right?
Right.
And I was like, no, that's stupid. Like,
yeah.
That's one of the best songs.
Yeah.
Down there at the pawn shop.
Yeah. What's crazy about Sublime is that Bradley Noel, Eric, and Bud, the three of them went before they got signed to MCA Universal Records. they were selling 40,000 CDs out of the trunk of their car a week.
I believe it.
That's how crazy big they were before they even signed to a record label.
Mm-hmm.
And the record label
They were
was
doing
like,
it independently.
yeah, they were. It was like, it was all do it yourself, and it was one of those things where, it's like, they didn't even need a record label. You know what I'm saying? They were making so much money, weekly, and, they signed, and, things got just weirder and darker for, Bradley and heroin, and he was dead,
Yeah, so that's how big the scene, guys. If you guys want to look into that scene out here in Southern California,
Yeah.
that's how huge it was.
Right.
Like people, it was a whole fucking scene, and it was massive because it went from like literally from like it was the entire like Southern California, guys. If we were to we're in the LA area, it's like if we want to go to San Diego, it's like 2 hours, right?
Right.
2 hour drive more with traffic. If we want to drive to San Francisco, which is still in the state, it's like a 6 hour drive.
Right.
And then San Francisco isn't the northern part of the state, because I feel like sometimes people don't understand how fucking huge the United States is. Because if you're in Europe, right, you can take an hour flight from one country to the next. Here, it's like you're going from one city in the same state. So if I want to go to New York, it's like 5.5 hour flight.
Right.
From one coast of the United States to the other, just to kind of give you guys perspective. And so, yes, Southern California is fucking huge. I believe they said we can fit England in Southern California. I read that somewhere. Random fact. Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
And so just to kind of give you guys perspective of how big the scene was and why they were selling that many records, not having even a record like contract.
And by the way, do you remember Native Wayne?
No.
Native Wayne was the Reggae Revolution DJ on K-Rock here locally in Los Angeles at the time. And the show, I think, was syndicated, so you could hear it on other stations, It was on Sundays. Mm-hmm. He's the first person to play Sublime on the radio. He brought them in the studio.
Really?
Yeah. It was right before I started working there. It was like a couple years maybe before. But yeah, he's credited with bringing Sublime to K-Rock, so that's how they got on the radio and made them even bigger,
Mm-hmm.
Exposed them to the world, basically, because the rest, everybody else started picking up the songs that we were playing and copying the playlist, and they were played across the U.S., and then across the, the pond and everywhere else. And they just became even bigger, So yeah, they're a crazy story.
Yeah, and so we were talking about Gwen Stefani. She was in that scene as well, and so that's where No Doubt came from.
Yes, I was there for the birth of that too, by the way.
Yeah, were you?
Yes.
Fill us in.
That's another band that Rodney on the Rock for K-Rock brought in, and played for the first time on his show. And his show was one of those specialty shows that would play at midnight on Sunday nights till 2 a.m., It's one of those things where, like, you're either into a show because you're listening to local bands or you're not, And he's been on K-Rock for, like, since the start, So he just recently got let go just a few years ago, But he's been there forever. And he's credited with bands like No Doubt, Tori Amos, who else? I think, is it Coldplay is another one? Coldplay. There's a lot of bands that he's credited with making famous. I mean, we're not even counting the 80s. We're only looking at the 90s. So he's been there since the 70s, Mm-hmm. So he's a super icon. Those bands super really appreciate him, for all that he's done and, making them famous, basically, But yeah, I was there when No Doubt was first played. And in fact, when we first started playing them, I have memories of Gwen coming to our office. This is when I first started working there, okay? And I was working in the office, and she would come to everybody's office, and she was delivering handmade chocolate chip cookies to everybody.
Oh, she's so cute.
Yeah, we were like, wow, this is so cool, And like maybe, let me see, when was it? It was maybe a few months later. They didn't headline. Sorry, they played one of our Christmas shows, right, at Universal
Mm-hmm.
Amphitheater. They were one of the bands that played on either night. I can't remember which one. And after that, they had their own headlining tour for Tragic Kingdom, and they were just unbelievably huge. Where I remember we went from she would come visit us and bring us cupcakes and cookies to we never saw her again because she just now she has an entourage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then No Doubt's huge, and the rest of the band super cool, super down to earth, and would come and hang out with us and visit and say hi and how are things going. But she just became bigger, so big that she became Gwen Stefani just by herself, her solo career,
Mm-hmm.
But their music was huge, and it was a good record.
Yeah.
It was a good album. I remember listening to Tragic Kingdom, and I'm like, every single one of these songs on this album is amazing.
Yeah.
What did you think the first time you heard it?
I really liked them a lot. I think once they blew up with Don't Speak, I kind of was like, after that.
Right.
For me, their first two albums were it for me. After that, I lost interest. It was too mainstream.
Yeah.
It wasn't what I fell in love with.
Yeah. The whole Rocksteady and all that. It became more,
yeah.
more
I mean,
mainstream.
it was cool. It was totally cool, but it wasn't who I fell in love with.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so for me, the
right.
first two albums were like the shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was a big fan.
I feel the same way too. I mean, I only say that I continue being a fan because I knew them personally. But,
yeah, of course.
But it wasn't, but aside from that, I'm like, the music, I don't know, like it's less ska, less punk, and it's more pop now,
Yeah,
but I get it.
I did lose interest. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but I get it. They have to change with the times, right? They have to do what the record label tells them to do and helps them, make the career bigger or whatever. Anyway, I guess it worked, because they keep getting bigger and bigger,
It worked for her.
Yeah, it definitely worked for
her. It
was
the guy's demise at the point, because it was electronic music.
Right.
We're not stupid. We're music lovers.
Right.
You could tell that the albums were literally, they were just pretending to be playing, but they really weren't.
Right.
So I felt for the guys.
Yeah.
But money talks, and you do what you need to.
Yeah.
But another band, Rage Against the Machine,
Yes.
also a LA band.
Yep.
One of the biggest inspirations and in my fucking life, I grew up in the time of the fucking riots in 92. I was 9 years old, guys.
Right.
And growing up in the hood, their music spoke to me in a way that, it was my first experience as a 9-year-old with political rock. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because maybe some bands would kind of throw it, but this is literally all they were from A through Z.
Oh yeah, it's in your face
political.
For sure. Yeah.
And I loved it. I saw a video of them playing, I think in 1991 on Cal State Northridge campus.
Yeah.
Nobody, everyone's walking by them.
Yes.
A year later, they could not get away with that.
Yeah.
Like nobody knew. There was a few people who would stop on campus and you can tell they were metalheads,
Yeah. Yeah.
But they blew up right after that. And I guarantee you more than half the people that were at the campus probably didn't realize that they were watching history right there.
Yeah. Not only that, but they also played the first Lollapalooza, and that was at Irvine Meadows, and they had a bunch of stages set up, right? Mm-hmm. And Lollapalooza side stage, okay, you're going to trip out on this. Rage Against the Machine played a side stage. Few people were watching. And I remember thinking, this band belongs on the main stage. Holy shit, Mm-hmm. And two, you know who else played after them?
No.
Dressed up as a baby with a baby outfit and was Tool.
Oh, I love Tool. If you haven't heard that on this podcast, I love Tool. I think I've mentioned them in so many episodes.
Those two bands, how crazy is that? Those two bands playing a little side stage with hardly anybody watching. Because remember, people were like, oh no, we want to see Porno for Pyros, we want to see Jane's Addiction, And I'm like, that's great, but I was more excited about these side bands. And then I remember thinking, whoa, this is crazy, this music's amazing. But it's weird to see Rage in a side stage, middle of the afternoon, blaring sun. It's weird. I mean, not anymore, but it was back then. And it's weird to see Tool in the blaring sun. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Where now Tool's a band you don't even see on stage. You see shadows of them,
They were literally in the cusp, but I
Yeah.
don't think anybody knew that they would be as big as they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I'm sure their listeners are like, "Oh, I don't listen to rock, so I don't know them." But
Right. Right.
they were the shit,
Yeah.
both of them.
Yep.
Now, obviously, without going into the details of what's happening in the U.S. right now, there's a lot of new people who are discovering Rage Against the Machine, and now all of a sudden, I think they have new fans. Because a lot of what they talk about in their songs is still pertaining to the shit people are going through right now.
Right.
And so then you have guys who were probably into it, or people, guys. I say guys, but it could be people who were into them rocking out to it, but probably now as they're older have a problem with it.
Right.
But their message is consistent, and
Yeah, it is.
so I definitely love them. And Tool blew up as well. Huge. They were very dark. Their music videos are super fucking dark.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I love this shit. Like, yes. But I couldn't listen to it around my dad because he would say I was listening to satanic devil music. But that's it. He raised me this way. So my dad, just so you guys know, went through like a whole I'm atheist type thing to I'm religious all of a sudden. But he tried to get me and my brother to kind of be less rocker kids and hip hoppers. Oh my God. I sound like such an old lady. Hip hoppers.
Hip hoppers. TikTokers. Yeah.
Oh shit. Yeah, it's catching up to me on my age. That's
You old now. You old
the
now.
hip hoppers.
Yeah.
But me and my brother were like, yeah, we're not on the same page, Dad. Like, but it was so like Tool to me was like huge. Like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I remember one of my cousins like, you like guy music. She told me that, and I was like, what do you mean guy music? I just like rock. Like,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
and
One
then,
of the best Tool memories I have is that year that they blew up. My first year working there in radio, by the way, was they played our Halloween ball at the American Legion Hall in Hollywood. So like it was Tool and Gravity Kills, and I'm just like, this is fucking amazing.
yeah. And I was too young. You're so lucky. I couldn't even my mom wouldn't even let me go.
I was barely
outside.
21. Like I was barely allowed to work there, because I had to be 21 to work there, And I was
Yeah.
barely months old, where I was just like, this is amazing. And of course, every Tool performance after that just never compares to that one, because it's like it was a small venue, and it was just different. It was cool, It was a Halloween vibe. Everybody's dressed up in costumes,
Yeah. Yeah. I also liked Alice in Chains a lot.
Yes, they're great.
Another band that one had more metal sound to it.
Yes.
Produced differently, and I really dug that.
Yeah, they also came out of the Seattle grunge scene as well.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Also meeting with an end due to overdose.
Right.
Well, I think they kind of ended before he died, right? Because he just wasn't capable of playing at that point.
Yeah,
I think they hadn't played for a few years, right?
Yeah, I think they broke up for a while, and then they came back, and I think I'm not sure they're still at it. I could be wrong, but
yes, with obviously another singer.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Sounds pretty. I've seen him live, so I went to what's it called, Epic Center in San Bernardino, maybe 10 years ago,
Right.
and I was going there it was more than 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole purpose of me going was to see Tool. I think Linkin
Right.
Park was there, and so was Alice in Chains. But of course, they had another singer. But I do remember telling my friend, I was like, the singer's pretty good. He sounds legit. Like,
Yeah, right.
yeah. So, yeah, of the things I do for Tool, I tell you. I
Careful
love Tool.
now.
Yeah.
Have you tried his wine?
What?
Have you tried his wine?
No, they have wine.
Yeah, Maynard James Keenan has his own wine. He has a winery.
Oh,
I want to
no idea.
say, I'm trying to remember, is it New Mexico or Arizona? Maybe it's Arizona. It might be Sedona, Arizona, actually. And he has his own winery,
Yeah.
which you could probably find here. You just got to go to the right store,
Yeah. Huh. Dun dun dun.
Made with blood.
Yeah. Now, Metallica was an 80s band, right? But they did pretty well in the early 90s.
Oh,
They
yeah.
had a few of their biggest hits. So I was definitely like Sad But True. I really dug.
Yeah.
They were pretty good. Really, really enjoyed them. We talk about Bush?
No.
So Bush, also another good band.
Yes.
Gwen Stefani married the lead singer. They had a few good songs I really liked as well. Again, it's that deeper voice. Remember, I was saying I liked the rockers that had the deep voice.
Right.
They had a few good songs that were pretty big out here.
Yeah,
And
that record, Razor Blade Suitcase, was huge. They had a lot of hits off that. And I remember I was there for the birth of them too. And actually, funny story, we had him on our podcast, and was chatting with Gavin Rossdale about that. And I quickly brought up a memory because we went bowling with Bush. We went bowling at midnight, okay, in Hollywood. It was shut down just for us and for Bush. They showed up at 1, 2 in the morning, so we bowled from like midnight to 5 a.m. and last call 2 a.m. and all that. No. They were still serving beer till alcohol till 5 a.m.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was just like the days of like really cool, crazy stuff where the bands would get involved, and but those days are over, But it was fun to like quickly bring that up to him, and he made a joke because he sucked at bowling. He was horrible. Like he kept throwing the bowling ball, and it would go in a different lane. That's why when I brought it up, he laughed and he goes, "Yep, I still suck."
Yeah. He's like, I believe him.
Yeah, it was so funny. But yeah, they were huge, man. And then, I mean, you could not turn on a '90s movie where you wouldn't hear like their song in the movie trailer or in the movie. They were just that big.
Yeah, they were huge. That's why I keep going back. Like, I don't know if it's just my lifestyle, but I feel like rock was so fucking huge back then.
It was.
We've been kind of talking about like the heavier stuff, right? I also like 311. Did you like them?
Yeah, I did. There were really. I was there for. I wasn't there for the beginning. I was there after they started getting a little bit more famous. But they were really nice guys from Nebraska, and they just did that whole rap rock fusion really well, with live instruments, with live guitars and shit, and I'm like, fuck, I really dig this,
Yeah.
No, I like the old stuff. The newer stuff, they got a little too experimental and hippy dippy and reggae, and I'm like, I like the harder stuff, guys,
Yeah. Yeah. They were pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think the last album that I enjoyed of theirs was probably the one that came out in 2001. But I think so that's the thing with me is I lose interest if you change, and I'm all for them bands or artists changing up based on how they are, who they are at the time.
Right.
But for me, I lost interest again, just like other bands when they became a little too mainstream.
Yeah.
So I mean, good that other people were finding them, but like it was almost like, all right, next. Like, So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing on my part, but it's like if I really like someone this way, but I'm not a judger. Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I hate that like I just move on to the next band. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
some people take really big offense to it. I don't.
Right.
But yeah, I really, really like them. I was just like, and their logo, it was like we had it on our folders, on our binders, like 311. It just looked really badass, like graffiti or something in my mind, right? Like,
Right.
Oh, I was such a loser.
No, you weren't.
I was such a
Hush, lady,
loser.
hush.
So we've been kind of sticking to the early 90s, right? I'm trying to think of other bands that were like pretty badass. I mean, there's so many.
I mean, there was stuff by, it was the birth of the Foo Fighters as well in the 90s. After Nirvana, that kind of, they formed.
And I couldn't get into the Foo Fighters at all.
I can see that.
I think the only song I liked was Everlong, and then I didn't like any other shit. Like it just
Right.
seemed too basic to me.
Right.
Because we just went over these bands, right, that I was into.
Right.
So they seem too basic. It's a basic bitch music.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not kidding. That's what my thoughts.
Oh, I mean, that's your taste. There's nothing wrong with that. You
Yeah.
know? To me, I thought
So
it
if you're a
was.
Foo Fighters fan, you're a basic bitch.
Yeah.
You can write to me at purposely curious.
Yeah, write to Mary, not me, because I am a fan and I like them. And if you're listening, Dave Grohl, I love you, man.
No, I love him. I respect him. I just couldn't get into them.
No, you know, they the cool thing is that, of course, one of the most memorable Nirvana performances was their performance on MTV Unplugged.
Yeah,
And it was
one of the best.
Yeah, it's amazing because it's like it's one of the few times like I don't see footage of Kurt Cobain like high off his shit, you know, like just on something, you know, like he was so into that moment, and they played so good. It was so solid, and they had guest members from other bands play with them, the Meat Puppets and from the Germs. Oh my God, what's his name? It's gonna drive me nuts. The guitar player from the Germs. He was playing with them, and then he became one of the Foo Fighters with Dave Grohl. So that's how the Foo Fighters formed, you know, slowly, and then they lost one of the guitar players, and then they replaced it with another local guitar player, Chris Schiff. That's a new guitar player, and you know, and yeah, you're either into them or you're not. You know, it's you know, like for you it wasn't a thing. You know, for me it was kind of a slow burn. It wasn't until their second record where I got into them. You know.
Yeah. It was just an awkward transition, I think, probably for a lot of us being Nirvana fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I respect the Foo Fighters, though, because they had to, you know, essentially, you know, fight for the notoriety of, you know, expectations, right?
Yeah, they gotta be their own thing and not sound like Nirvana, you know?
Yeah, which they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll give them that much.
You know who else was cool came around that time? And this one, I'm gonna mention these two bands, okay? Because they're kind of in the same genre almost, same thing. And they kind of, one was famous and the other one sold out. I'm gonna explain that. It's one of them is Green Day and the other one's Blink 182. Were you fans of either of them?
I liked both, yes.
Yeah.
And my homegirl Amy is, if you talk shit about Green Day, I'll let her know to listen.
Oh, I got Green Day stories till the cows come home, dude.
Yes, I loved both of them. Yeah.
Yeah, the crazy thing about Green Day is, you know, Dookie came out, I don't even know what year that was, 92, 91, or early 90s. And that was such a huge hit, you know? Mm-hmm. And, you know, of course, you know, they were on, what was that, Woodstock? It was Woodstock, right? And I think they played Woodstock one of those years. And then it was like late 90s, and then Nimrod came out, and it's just like, they started, you know, the singer had problems, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if it was, I don't know if it was, I think it was alcohol, not drugs, but I think it was alcohol. And he had problems because it's like, you know, dude, you fucking sold out, punk rock, you sold out, you know? And it got to him, you know, because he started out punk rock roots, you know, from the Bay Area, you know? Mm-hmm. And, you know, all his friends and No Effects and all these other bands, you know, they're like, fuck you sold out. And this, well, it's like,
No Effects.
You know, it's like, come on, you know, it's like, we saw it differently, right? In radio. Mm-hmm. And here's the crazy thing. Acoustic Christmas 1997. It was the year that David Bowie headlined and the Reunited Jane's Addiction headline on separate nights, okay? Mm-hmm. The Friday before the show, we had 4 bands cancel, okay? Bjork canceled, Jamiroquai canceled, Orbital canceled, a bunch of bands canceled. And my boss was so powerful at the time that he picked the phone and like called Gwen Stefani personally and was like, hey, can you guys play tomorrow? So No Doubt got added. And then he called Beck, hey Beck, can you play tomorrow? He got added. He called Rancid got added. So he added a bunch of bands, and then one of the last bands he called was Blink 182. And this is when the record Dude Ranch came out, you know, around that time. Mm-hmm. And it was so hard for the band to say yes because they knew that they were going to sell out, okay? that NoFX was gonna call their shit out and be like, "Fuck you, sell out fucking pieces of shit." You know what I'm saying? Like the punk rock scene takes that shit serious, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So Mark and Tom went on the radio, and what's his name, Scott Rayner, the original drummer. They went on K-Rock live at 5:00 to explain to the fans that it's like, hey guys, you know, we're playing your show and we're so excited K-Rock's playing us on the radio now, and we just want to say that, look, people are gonna look at us and be like, you guys fucking sold out, you know, whatever. But it's like, look, you know, we're tired of hustling. We want to actually pay the bills. You know, we want to actually get the music out there for the fans. You know, it's for the fans. And what they did, I thought was really interesting because they had to like explain themselves, you know. But at the same time, I'm like, they're doing nothing wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Because they want to do it for the fans, you know. That's all they want to do, you know. And they always did it for the fans, and they still do it for the fans. And you know, no matter what lineup is currently, you know, to get whoever in the band now, you know. But it was interesting that I was there for that moment when the internet, it was the early days of the internet, and everything went crazy. Everybody's like, fuck you and fuck them, and I hate them, and this and this. And then it's like, who cares? Because they sold so many records.
Yeah.
They became so famous, and it's like, good for them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because they never.
I was a huge fan of Travis Barker.
Yeah, he didn't come until later.
Still,
you know,
better drummer.
Oh no, he's amazing. He's probably one
gifted.
of the best. He's one of the best drummers.
Oh yeah,
period.
Gifted. I was like, still.
Yeah, he's one of the best.
No
period.
comparison.
Oh yeah, no. Because you got to remember that the original drummer Scott is no Travis Barker. You know, in fact, Blink-182 is a joke of a band. They're not even a band. You know what I'm saying? They were more like, hey, we don't even know how to play these fucking instruments. We're gonna pull our pants down and jerk off on stage and just run around naked and tell mom and dad jokes and fuck you jokes, you know, because that's what they do, you know. I'm sorry, that's what they used to do, you know.
Yeah.
So they were never like, hey, you know, we're playing, like, they sounded like shit. Like, you listen to the record and it's like, this record's so good, but how come they suck live, you know?
Yeah.
And
they
it just,
young.
cause they didn't care, you know. Mm-hmm. And then once Travis got added to the band and was, you know, full-time drummer, like they started taking the music more serious, and that's why you hear the songs like Adam's Song and all that, you know, where it's more melodic, you know, and you actually hear the notes playing, you know. It was more like they took it serious, and they were like, yeah, let's actually sound good. Like, let's write these high school songs, you know, and love songs for girls and for guys, and you know, and our fans, you know. And I respect them for that because they did evolve, you know. Yeah. But they became huge, and it's like, good for them. And you know, I don't know what the punk rock, you know, scene looks at them now, or you know, they don't. I'll tell you what, they don't care because, you know, Travis Barker was in the Transplants with my friend Tim Armstrong, you know, from Rancid, you know, so he crossed over and did all these things with other bands, and was able to, you know, say that, hey, it's fucking cool, dude. Like, there's nothing wrong with selling out, you know. It's like, if you want to, you know. Like Bad Religion is another band, right? They're a punk rock band.
I like them too.
But they were also on heavy on K-Rock, you know? So it's like, they also did stuff for K-Rock. So it's not that they sold out. It's just that, hey, they wrote music for radio, you know? Mm-hmm. You don't have to. Like, NoFX does not write music for radio. NoFX is one big fuck you to radio, you know? They're like, they don't care. They'll never do it, you know? And for a while, you know who else is like that? Was Pennywise is like that. Mm-hmm. But then Pennywise changed because we started to play Fuck Authority on the radio, you know?
Yeah.
And they were
but just think about what you just said, though. You guys started playing Fuck Authority. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it wasn't radio friendly.
No.
It was just, you get what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you know, they didn't really change.
Right.
It's just I'm speaking for them at least.
The times changed.
Yes.
So it was more acceptable to have Tool on the radio and Rage Against the Machine and, you know, bands like Blink, and, you know, it was more acceptable now, you know. The times definitely changed, and the fan base changed, you know. And it was great because it was a good time for a lot of different type of music, you know. Do
you remember The Offspring?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where do they fall in that category?
They were right there. They're, oh my God. They were there way before I started working there. They were in Ignition, came out in 1990, 91, I think it was. Yeah. And
I love them too.
Yeah. I'll tell you, they played Weenie Roast 1997 right before The Cure. The Cure was supposed to headline. You know, they did headline, but The Cure didn't go on until 2 a.m, okay? The reason why The Cure didn't go until 2 in the morning, because the Offspring were right before them. You know what the Offspring did? They fucking trashed the whole venue.
Wow.
They just told everybody, like, and it was cool because Dexter, the singer, was dressed up like Michael Jackson. And he had like multiple jackets on, you know, in each one. He had like a glitter glove, like Michael Jackson, you know, and then he had like different jackets, and he would take one off and it was silver, and then they take the next one off and it was red, you know, glittery, you know. And he was just like a total like pop star, making fun of, you know, pop music, you know. And he just told everybody like, hey, you know, it's time to clean up Orange County, pick up some shit and throw it at us, you know. And you would just see tons of trash coming over to the stage, 17,000 people throwing shit, you know.
Yeah.
It was like one of my most memorable things. You know, fun fact, I don't know if you know this, but he's a scientist. Dexter.
No.
He actually was I'm not going to mention, but he was at the same campus that I was at recently, and he got his PhD, and he worked in virology. And not only that, he has, in my opinion, mind you, the best salsa you could buy in the store. It's the best fucking thing you can put on your tacos, burger, or pizza. It's called Gringo Bandito. It's good. Seriously, it's good stuff. Like, I love hot sauce. I'll eat Cholula and all that stuff. No, this stuff destroys all of them. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, I have to look into it because I like spicy. I dig spicy.
I'll get you some. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to think. So there's the Offspring, right?
Yeah.
There's so many. There was a lot of also soft rock that was huge too.
Yes.
Do you remember Jim Blossoms?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I used to love that song.
Hey Jealousy.
Hey Jealousy.
Yeah. I actually saw them.
Is that wait? Is that the one that goes, "If you think it'd be alright,
yes,
if I could just crash here tonight"? Crazy thing is that like I would sing it, and this is early '90s, right?
Yeah.
It's about him, like it's so inappropriate, basically. But
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey, jealousy."
Yeah.
I love it. I used to love that song and play it over and over.
Yeah, I remember they. If you want to hear how crazy of a scene this was at the time and how big that song was at the time, the Stone Temple Pilots were the opening band for Jim Blossoms at the Greek Theater. That's where I saw them.
That's crazy. I think it'd be the other way around now.
Right?
Yes. Damn, I didn't know that.
They had like one hit song. That's it. And then Stone Temple Pilots had 5 hit records, you know?
Yeah.
More, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy too because something similar like that happened to me. We're not talking, I'm getting out of the 90s, but 10 years ago, was it 10 years ago? Yeah, 10 years ago, we went to go see Florence and the Machine.
Oh, nice.
Me and my girlfriend. But guess who was opening for Florence and the Machine? And we fell in love with him.
I'm pretty sure I was there. I'm trying to remember who that was. Oh, I can't remember.
So when you go to the Hollywood Bowl, or was it the Greek Theater? I want to say it was the Hollywood Bowl. You can buy wine and
Yes,
sangrias.
yeah,
and so we had some drinks beforehand. And so we were feeling buzzed. And so this guy comes on, you know, because he's not he's the opening act. And, you know, we like R&B. And we were like, damn, this guy sounds really good. But we were already buzzed. And I was joking with my girlfriend. I was like, fuck, I feel like I want to make love right now.
Damn.
You still don't know who it is?
I know who it is. I just can't remember his name. He performed at the Super Bowl recently, right?
It was The Weeknd.
Oh.
So he was opening for Florence and the Machine. The Weeknd is like the biggest shit now.
Yeah.
Like Florence and the Machine would probably play before him.
Right.
But that's when I fell in love with him. It was 10 or 11 years ago. And he was opening for Florence and the Machine. And I will never, I always say my relationship with him started that night. Because I swear to you, I was like, damn, I want to make love to this guy. Like, not to him, but like to his music. But,
right.
So that was funny. Because now, kind of like what we were talking about, it would be the other way around. Stone Temple Pilots, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it triggered that memory for me.
Dude, I have a little side note. I have a ticket stub. This is back in the 80s when I was a kid, before I went to my first concert, okay?
Yeah.
It was around that time. My friend, there was a local place in a local hair salon in West Hollywood called Long Hair Rocks. Okay, they would sell the tickets for all the Roxy whiskey shows. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I have a ticket. It's in my album somewhere, portfolio. This girl had a crush on at the time. Her sister's boyfriend, Dino, was in a band called Jasmine Sunrise. Opening band, No Doubt.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Yeah.
That was in the late 80s, and I still have that ticket stub. And I showed it to Gwen. Like, I brought it when I showed it to her. She was like, holy shit. She's like, I can't believe that. I'm like, dude, you guys are on top of the world now, and it's like, it's crazy that you guys were opening band for some little fucking band, some guy that I knew,
Yeah. And it's crazy because the scene back then was so huge.
Yeah.
That I don't know, I think it's not like that anymore. When my brother was young, I used to take him, those screamo bands, emo bands.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was the end of that scene.
Right.
If that makes any sense. Because you don't really see small bands playing in venues now.
Right.
And I'm not just saying it because I'm older, but I remember, driving my brother everywhere, with my Jetta, putting his drum kit in there. And so I feel like that's the sad part of, that scene is that camaraderie of that's instead of going to the club, you were going to the bars or the joints they were playing at. Right. So you don't really have that now.
No.
Anywhere.
No.
Yeah. And it's kind of sad because I feel like it went together. Right.
Yeah.
So we were just talking, all these bands were opening for each other. They were all homies. They were all getting high together, right?
Yeah.
We talked about the Nirvana, Kurt Cobain stuff, the theories we talked about. There are people from other bands that are in these theories, Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's nice if you guys want to look into the 90s rock scene. You will see how everyone knew each other. They all partied with each other. It was just complete chaos, but I feel like the best rock music came from that chaos. And it could just be me being nostalgic, having grown up with that music,
Right.
missing it, because I still don't get tired of them. Well, the only band that I did get kind of tired of that I loved growing up,
Who was?
it was the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I love them. So check this out, Red Hot Chili Peppers fans out there. If you're a new fan in the last 10 years, you're the problem.
Yes. Right.
You are the fucking problem.
Yeah.
And honestly, I love them, but it's just I got tired. I was like, I can't listen to them anymore.
Yeah.
And I've seen them live. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was like Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic, and then anything after that was like the whole Californication thing. I was like not into it.
Yeah. And it's just too much. Like, yeah, but they're a great band. I'm not saying they're not.
Yeah.
They're another local band, but for me, it was just like, okay, this is too much. I got tired of them. You can't overplay a radio. You know what I mean?
I know.
They are so overplayed, and this is in the last 10 years, that you can tell who the older fans used to be and who the newbies are.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh my God, they so rock. Everyone else is like, has fatigue of them. But not to say that they're not a great band, because we grew up listening to them and we loved them.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely loved them. And it's crazy that it took me a while to get to see them like up close and personal, Mm-hmm. When I finally did, it was Black Eyed Peas opening for No Doubt, opening for Chili Peppers, okay? It was at the Irvine Meadows. And I was standing in the pit, like front row, and I remember thinking, this is so awesome, right? I'm finally gonna get to see them. And mind you, I love their music, right? Like I said, I love the old stuff. And here's, John Frusciante playing at the time, right? And here's one song, and he plays a fucking 14-minute solo. And then here's song number 2 and another 15-minute solo. And I'm like, okay. I think I'm, and mind you, I'm a guitar player.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, this is fucking amazing. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, what's the next song? Because you have 22 more songs to play. And I'm like, holy shit, it's, like, what, what's going on? And that's when I realized, like Californication, that was like the changing point for me. And for me, I like all the older stuff,
Yeah. And I agree. I did like Californication, but the radio, there is such a
Yeah.
thing as overplaying music.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
they just played that shit to death to the
Yes.
point where I was like, yeah, I fucking grew up loving them, knowing all the lyrics. I'm over it. But I'm a fan. I'm just like, it was
Right.
just a little. I don't know how it is where you guys are listening, but we have a station here, K Rock.
Used to have that station.
Used to. Well, okay, but you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
the only thing they would play is literally like 3 songs from 3 bands, and I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm over this shit.
Yeah.
Like, so anyway, well, this was fun, don't you think?
Yeah.
Reminiscing.
Yes.
So I might actually do
Oh.
kind of like a playlist, and I'll post it on my IG for you guys.
Before we end this, I want to actually mention one more band. Because
Okay.
this band trips me out, okay? Did you ever get into Third Eye Blind?
I did, yeah.
I did too. And, they
How's
hit,
it gonna be?
yeah, great songs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they had like 5 or 6 hit singles. This was in the late 90s, 97, 98, right? Around there.
Mm-hmm.
And they played our Weenie Rose show at the time when I was working radio. That's the big summer show that we do. And then I remember thinking, okay, well, I'm done. It was so overplayed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of became like the joke, like kind of like, people were like, oh, here we go. Because remember, music started to change after that, right?
Yeah.
Because, here came Deftones, here came Korn, here came Limp Bizkit,
I love Korn. Yeah.
So it kind of killed all that stuff from the 90s, right? Because here comes the heavy new metal, right? The heavy new rock. So they became the joke, right? Along with, Creed and who's the other one? Nickelback. They kind of like became the joke, whatever. Then they kind of disappeared, right? Third Eye Blind disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, I don't like emo music. For me, emo, screamo music was not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
I respect those bands. I know some of those bands. And just a few years ago, I don't know if you've ever been to emo night.
No.
So these local clubs in Silver Lake and LA and Hollywood would throw emo night. And I'm like, what's that? And I used to joke with my coworkers, because mind you, like, I'm Generation X, okay? And my coworkers are all, millennials, and, they'd be like, we're going to emo night, whatever. I'm like, what's that? I used to make fun of them. I was like, do you guys just get together and cry together? And, I don't understand. What's the story, And they're like, no. It's like, Gerard Way, from My Chemical Romance is spinning records, at whatever club. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, well, I don't understand. What is he playing? And he's like, oh, they play all that good stuff, like Third Eye Blind. And I'm like, what? It was like a weird, like, Twilight Zone episode. I'm like, explain this to me, So all these bands like Yellow Card and Finch and, and My Chemical Romance and 30 Seconds to Mars and all that. So you would get like Jared Leto show up at Spaceland in Silver Lake, and he would like DJ. He would just DJ some music, and what they would play was all these 90s songs.
Mm-hmm.
Like Third Eye Blind and Weezer and Green Day, and I'm like, that's so weird. Because those bands aren't even like doing anything anymore,
Yeah.
Well, guess
they were
what?
tapping into it.
Yeah. Well, guess what? That emo scene like resurrected the Third Eye Blind like career. Because right before I left radio a few years ago, they were like headlining the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you like all these kids I worked with that weren't even born, okay, when that record came out, when those songs came out, were like so excited to be there. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out like how did that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does a scene who like they weren't even alive when Third Eye Blind came out, or they were super young, one or the other, and the music was huge, and then it faded quick because of the new metal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they went away. Like, you would only hear about them if they played the county fair, And then all of a sudden,
How's it gonna be?
Yeah.
Sorry, I love that song.
No, but it's crazy that now they're huge again.
Mm-hmm.
Like seriously, I would not be surprised if they play Super Bowl halftime next year, if there is, or if they play at the new SoFi Stadium or whatever, And I'm like, how crazy is that this emo scene resurrected a bunch of bands, that people forgot about from the 90s, which I think is really cool. because I listened to those bands and I thought those were cool, but then they went away, and I thought, well, music's changing, but then now it's a whole generation that are discovering them, all because of
the shit on the radio is whack.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's exactly it. It's like nobody was listening to radio. They were all going to emo night to see what Gerard Way was gonna play next on his vinyl records.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, that's really crazy, but it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That tripped me out.
Yeah. And I also, for example, me being like an early millennial, not on the older end, we are also nostalgic. We're talking about these songs, so now we got the money to go pay and go see them.
Right.
So,
yeah.
How's it gonna be when they don't know me?
That's a good record, I'm telling you.
To me, that's their best song.
Dude, I remember listening.
And it's well produced.
The whole record is well produced. And
yeah,
Stephen
listen
Jenkins,
to it with good quality headphones, and you're like, damn.
I'll tell you, Stephen Jenkins, he still has it. He can still play guitar. He can still sing. He's got it. And that song would make me sad. But you know which song would make me actually cry was Motorcycle Drive-By.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because that song tells you a sad story about a breakup. And I'm like, fuck, dude, you made me cry. But hey, that's a sign of a good song,
Yeah. Yeah. All the songs were good. So
I want to leave you with this little trivia, though. I want to ask you if you know this, okay? Here's a little trivia for you. Looking at the 80s and looking at the 90s, okay? Because you mentioned a guy's voice, right? How you like these guys' voices. There's this one guy singer, okay, who has the greatest range in his voice, where he could go really, really high and he can go really, really low. Can you guess who this person is?
Pearl Jam singer?
No, that's a good guess, but no.
That's what I had in mind. Okay. And this is just 90s?
80s,
or
90s. 80s, 90s, and present day. He's still around.
Oh, Axl Rose?
See, he is the person most people think that. So I think you're right on with that, because he's the one that most people think that, yes, he's the one, right? Because you look at all those music, Sweet Child of Mine, November Rain, like crazy vocal range, right? But it wasn't him, and somebody did some scientific analysis, and they found out that it was Mike Patton from the band Faith No More.
Oh.
So Faith No More, Mr. Bungle. I mean, I never knew this, okay? And the funny thing is, I had my own moment with him, because I talked to him a few months ago. He was a guest on our show, and I brought it up, and he was not happy about that.
Yeah.
It was like one of those questions, like, I don't fucking care, And it was just kind of funny, because I thought it was interesting that, he's in, the world records, people saying he's got the biggest range in voices, And that's so unique, right? Like, who can claim that,
Yeah.
But yeah, he didn't care. He didn't seem to care to talk about that.
No.
But I thought it was pretty cool, because it's not somebody I thought. I seriously, like you said, I thought it would be Axl Rose,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. Some trivia for you guys. Yeah. So let's do this again with another subject. Thank you for joining me, Leonie.
Always a pleasure, Mary.
Yes. And so I will be making a little playlist for you guys. I'm going to just post it on my Instagram. And then you guys can look them up if you want to see what it was that made me, get all in my feels. You can make one too if you want, Leonie, and I'll post it as well if you want.
I'll post. I'll give you one. Yeah.
Okay. Great. And then I'll make one, and then that'll be our playlist of 90s rock for you guys.
Yes.
And if you guys are young kids, you guys should check it out. Some of the greatest artists, in my opinion, musicians.
Yep.
Were in that decade. So.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, all right, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye. That was episode 33 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms. And follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely, the letter C, Pod. Until next time, rock on.